Hello and welcome to another managerial special from the Honest Football Podcast. And this one is probably one that I think it's fair to say we've been looking forward to the most in terms of the club, because it's a club that we've got a bit of a soft spot and an affinity for as a podcast. Vwhether it be from the first person we interviewed, which was Mark Palios, the chairman, whether it be that special matchday vlog at Watford in the FA Cup, and our first ever matchday vlog, of course, at Wycombe Wanderers as well. Tranmere Rovers are a club that have got a special place in our podcast heart. And today, after an emphatic 5-0 win in the league, they've appointed a new manager who we're going to discuss at length today. So joining me as always are Craig and Charlie. If you're looking forward to this one, please chuck a thumbs up on it. Subscribe down below. There's loads of fun content, interviews with pros. We've got championship predictions every match day and much, much more. But before, as always, lads, before we move on to the new manager, I want to give a bit of a talk to the previous one, because again, it didn't work out for him, Mike Jackson. But he took over from Mickey Mellon in the summer after he went to Dundee United. He was obviously assistant for a large part of that brilliant spell beforehand, including those FA Cup ties we talk about. So as much as it didn't work out for him as manager, we've got to praise his contribution to the club as a whole, haven't we, Charlie?
Yeah, to be honest, I think he inherited a difficult situation. And obviously, we're not going to have points per game and all of that, but even the squad he had, we saw it a few times last year. They did a bit of a clear out over the summer because some lads were probably getting the wrong side of 30 now, who are very good players in their own right. People like Neil Dans, people like that, but probably didn't have another year in them as an example. So then you're talking about someone coming into a situation where the team's been relegated in fairly difficult circumstances, working with a fairly new squad. There was a couple of maybe, and Tranmere have been brilliant with us, but there was a couple of players that went out that I thought maybe they could have held on to that might have. You don't necessarily know the extenuating circumstances of that. So I feel sorry for him because it was a tough situation to be in. The results weren't great. You have to acknowledge that as well at the same time. But for me, I don't know many people with his experience or lack of as a manager who would have done much better, if I'm being brutally honest, in the situation he was in. So it's a bit of a shame the way it ended for him, but I don't think he's necessarily a bad manager. I think he was just in a very tough situation. So yeah.
No, that's fair enough. And Craig, obviously, he was part of that management team with Mickey Mellon that had some very special days last season, which we saw. You and Charlie watched them at MK Dons as well. As we mentioned, Paul Tisdale's final game in the Bristol Rovers one last week. So I think it's fair that he did contribute to Tranmere Rovers, even though, as Charlie said, it probably ended pretty sourly with his first team reign, should we say.
Yeah, obviously where Tranmere were for the last 3 seasons, I think they from where they were in the National League to that, obviously they went up to League One. It was absolutely roller coaster ride, and they done ever so well to get 2 straight promotions. Not many teams can do 2 straight promotions. That's very hard as well. Obviously in playoffs as well, it's very hard to win 2 since the playoffs. Yeah, obviously I think with League One last season, I think they were just about getting there. Obviously they were starting getting on form before the lockdown and the season got null and void. Sorry, the points of the games, should I say? And obviously they got harshly relegated to League Two, and Mickey Mellon moved on to Dundee United, and obviously we wish him well at Dundee United. Obviously getting relegated to League Two, the way they got relegated to League Two, I always felt that was always hard. With the appointment of Michael Jackson, I think it was always a risk. New manager, obviously he wanted to be his own man. Obviously could have kept the same philosophy that Mickey Mellon had, but obviously when you're assistant to be the number one guy, you have your own philosophy, as we've all seen with like Graham Jones, for example.
Yep.
So yeah, it obviously was tough. The results weren't going away, and look, you've interviewed Mark Palios, and we follow his wife on Twitter, and she follows us, and they seem really respectable, down to earth owners. The sacking of Michael Jackson was a bit faint-hearted, and it's not deep regret, but obviously, yeah, they didn't want to sack their own man, but obviously the results weren't going their way.
Yeah, I think you've led on to our next question well, which is obviously we've spoken to Mark Palios. They've been really supportive as us as a podcast when they didn't need to be, and they're football people, Mark and Nicola Palios, and they seem to have the respect of the fans that they'll make the right decision. They were willing to give Mike Jackson a go. It didn't work out. And obviously the good thing for a new manager coming in, who we'll get to in a minute, is the fact that since Mike Jackson left, they're 5 games unbeaten, 3 league wins, an FA Cup victory against the League One side, the penalty win against Wigan in the EFL Trophy. I mean, you might feel hard done by if you're Ian Dawes and Andy Parkinson, but it's a great position to come into, isn't it, Charlie?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't know, sometimes that continuation of that leadership, as good as it was, under Mickey Mellon, obviously they did very well. Sometimes you do need that new approach. Things get a bit stale, can't they? And actually, if you're getting a new squad in, trying to impart that same philosophy and same style of football that they played last year with a new set of players isn't always easy. Whereas a new manager coming in, he has his own ideas, which we'll obviously get onto in a bit, but probably the right thing to do.
But let's move on to the new man. I mean, you've nailed that all, lads. But moving on, the new man is Keith Hill. Now, there's a lot to talk about here. I'm going to pick out the first paragraph of the Tranmere statement, which I think will get fans excited and explain why he's been appointed and why he was the outstanding candidate. Because there's been various favourites over the last week. But the first paragraph of the statement is, Keith Hill is a manager of significant experience and proven success at this level. Most notably, every full season he has managed in League Two, he has guided his team either to promotion or a place in the playoffs. He has never failed to do that. Now, we all put Tranmere in our top 7 at the start of the year. We said that was a minimum expectation, and they've got the right man for that, surely, haven't they, Craig?
Yeah, I think when I announced it to you guys that Keith Hill was manager, I was a bit, I don't know about this one, to be honest. And after doing a bit of research on Keith Hill, and I'm like, yeah, do you know what? It's not a bad appointment, to be honest. It's, as you just said, obviously, his first full season. Obviously, he hasn't got a full season here. As we said, the other previous managers, it's going to take time. But the good thing about this squad, they've won last 3 league games. They beat Grimsby 5-0 today, so congratulations to them. But yeah, obviously the team is bouncing now, so hopefully he doesn't tweak it. He'll probably tweak it a little bit. Obviously, he'll have his own philosophy now, but obviously with the squad as it is now until obviously January, they'll be happy. They'll be bouncing. Yeah,
and Charlie, I mean, you'll be pleased to know that Corey Blackett-Taylor's been one of the stars of recent weeks because you pointed him out in that Watford vlog. But I want to come back to Craig's point because he talked about stability and not much changing. In Keith Hill's last couple of jobs, he's obviously had David Flitcroft with him as assistant. This time, the most notable part of that statement afterwards was that caretaker manager Ian Dawes is staying with him, as is Andy Parkinson, as assistant and first team coach, respectively. So that's got to be an important part and always has seemed to be in the Tranmere ownership decisions, which is keeping stability within the club as well and the structure.
Yeah, I think that to add to that, it's the sustainability. And I suppose, you start going hiring, firing people, it has a monetary impact, whether you like it or not. It's the way the world works. So if you can help not get rid of half of your management team, and obviously they were doing a good job as well. I think that's the difference. If they'd had a caretaker, and it was a tough situation, but who maybe didn't get the results they had, they'd have a bit more of a leg to stand on. But I think they'd have got a lot of stick, if Keith Hill comes in and the first thing he does is get rid of the 2 lads that are there. So I do think it's a club that is built on sustainability, given the difficulties that they had. And obviously, I think it's similar to Luton in the sense that success on the pitch is great, but it's really more about keeping that club afloat, keeping it going in the right direction. I think just on Keith Hill really quickly, I do think that actually, they were saying about that statement, working in the resources he did with Rochdale, I'm not saying it's the same as Tranmere. I'd argue that Tranmere are a slightly bigger club, and I don't like comparing clubs. The same one's bigger than the other. If you can do what he's done at a club of Rochdale's size, and not in an offensive way, but just you have to be realistic about that. You'd like to think he's got enough resources, and hopefully with Palios in charge, enough time to have a real positive impact there. So if you look at his time at Rochdale, he did tend to build his squad around one key figurehead. Rochdale, Ian Henderson, people like that. Be interesting to see how he does it at Tranmere and who he sort of identifies as that. The one transfer I was surprised about was when Paul Mullins went to Cambridge, who obviously now has been flying. And he's the sort of player I'd imagine Keith Hill probably would have built his squad around. So it'd be interesting to see how he plays that out, because I think he's got an unbelievable scoring record for Cambridge this year already. So, and we saw that when we watched him. Very good centre forward. So I'm surprised they let him go. It's who he might have in then as that sort of Ian Henderson sort of not role, but someone you can build a whole team around. So yeah.
Well, he went in January, didn't he?
He did. He went on loan after the FA Cup ties. Yeah, where he scored the winners.
I was amazed at though, really, because we watched him in those games, and especially against Watford, he was instrumental into them coming back into that game. So not just because of the penalty, just the way he linked up the play and all of that kind of thing. But there might have been other stuff on it. But the point I'm making is that Keith Hill, he's got a way he likes to play, and it is around that sort of central striker. So whether he'll still do that at Tranmere, it'd be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, the thing, we've spoken to a couple of pros who have played under Keith Hill, and the one word they've often used is he's a character, which can often go both ways. So we'll wait and see on that. But talking about sustainability, which Charlie set me up for perfectly, the most important thing, I guess, to come out of this is that initially the deal is only till the end of the season with an extension option for 12 months because of COVID and because of the uncertainty. So again, it's just another measure of sustainability and sort of sensible ownership in the lower ends of the EFL, where we just don't know what's going to happen, do we, Craig?
Yeah, and obviously, I don't really want to, like every video, I want to compare to Luton because obviously we're saying Luton the best, but it's similar. So it's a sensible decision to make it to the end of the season because they want to see how they get on. No doubt, I think that he'll probably get they'll sign a new contract come end of the season. I think regardless of where they finish this season. Right. Obviously, looking at the league table right now, they're only 2 points off the playoffs.
That's the most remarkable thing, isn't it?
The 3 straight wins, and they're 2 points off the playoffs. Another couple of wins next few weeks, they'll be right up there again. And obviously, looking at the table, League Two is very tight at the moment. It's all about keeping form, and if they keep winning the next few games, why not? They can get into the playoffs that we all predicted, and no doubt you're going to ask a question later. How do you think we'll go on?
I was going to say, we'll come to that in a minute. And also interesting to know, I'll ask you about this later, but only 6 points off third with Paul Mullen at Cambridge, as you mentioned. But Keith Hill, look, he's had a couple of difficult spells. He had that one at Bolton last year in League One, which was an interesting situation, coming in with a day to build a squad, essentially. And also when he went to Barnsley in between his 2 Rochdale stints, struggled a little bit higher up. It's fair to say that. But at Rochdale, he was a massive success. In League Two, he's been a massive success. So as Craig knows, the question's coming now. Where do you think Tranmere will be this year? Do you think it's the right appointment? And do you stick by your predictions of them finishing in the top 7? I will start with Charlie.
Yeah, I think it's the right appointment. I'd actually, just going back a question what you're saying about that short-term appointment. Normally you would sort of say, oh, maybe I haven't got confidence in the manager. But actually, I think it's a very sensible decision. And it's also sensible for Keith Hill, because to be honest, his motivation now to get them up the league is massive, isn't it? Because he could have a good long career here if he gets, if he, not saying he wouldn't do anyway, but it's a real incentive for him to do a good job here, that you've only got to the end of the season to do that. So with that in mind, I think he's more than capable enough of getting that squad, because there's still some good players. I know I mentioned about some leaving. I was heartbroken when Jake Caprice left, but that's another story for another time. But do you know what I mean? They've still got a cracking squad there, really. So is he the man to do that? Yeah. Will they finish in the playoffs? Yes. I'd like to think they'll go up. I really do, because I just think he's got enough time. He's a good manager at that level. He's organised. Like you say, you've got that character. He'll bring people along with him. He'll get people to buy into his way of wanting to play. So, yeah, in answer to your question, is he the right appointment? Yes. Will he get them up? Hopefully. I think they'll definitely be in that playoff spot, though.
And Craig?
Well, I'm just obviously looking at our predictions earlier this summer. Charlie, you did have them for third. Cody, you had them for fourth, and I had them for fifth. So, it's very hard to call at the moment with the playoffs. I think it'd be very tight, regardless. I think there's literally about 14 teams, to be honest, that can actually get into the playoffs. It sounds stupid as it is.
Well, Bolton are 4 points off the playoffs, and they're 16th.
But there you go. And obviously, we tipped Bolton to finish second, and Charlie had them to win it. Yeah. So it shows how unpredictable League Two is at the moment as well. Do I think they'll make the playoffs, though? I don't know. I'm going to probably say just about 7th. And they were just about 7th when they last got promoted out of League Two by the playoffs, which I did correctly guess.
They'll probably take that again with your previous for them.
With my previous for them, the Civil White Army. I think for the Civil White Army, I think they will sneak the playoffs.
Fair enough. And I'll be fair and, as always, give my opinion at the end. And I'm going to be the bold one again, I'm afraid. I actually think, given the way the season started and where they are, the teams that are around, I think they've got a chance of third. I think they'll be third or fourth. I can see Bolton on the rise again now. The likes of Carlisle and Forest Green are up there, as we predicted, amongst the three of us. I think it will be close, but they'll definitely be in the top 7. And going back to Charlie's point, I can see this being the next Rochdale for Keith Hill. I can see him being here for 4, 5, 6 years, building a squad. I can see the two being a good fit. Rochdale was a sustainable club working within its budget. As you say, Tranmere arguably a fair bit bigger, doing the same sort of thing. I can't see there being many negatives to this. Of course, he's a character. Of course, there's going to be some interesting moments, but I can only see it going well. And if they're playing good football like he was at Rochdale, when the fans come back, hopefully, if nothing else, they'll be in for a treat on the pitch. So that's about it for our reaction initially to Keith Hill's appointment as Tranmere manager. Of course, we know a fair few Tranmere fans are on board after the previous vlogs and that. So let us know down below what you think of Keith Hill's appointment. Please do chuck a thumbs up on the video. Let us know where you think they're going to finish this season. And of course, give us a follow on Twitter at HonestFootball3. Subscribe down below, as we said earlier, loads of content across the podcast. And we'll see you next time, as I'm sure there'll be another manager on the move soon.